Hey, this is Robert, and in this series we're going to be working on the heater core. It's going to be a multi-part series, so I can kind of detail it out and kind of go step by step. As part of the series, as it progresses, I'm actually going to do a little section on the heater core box repair. We do a little bit of fiberglass work on it, so we get that repaired up. So it's going to be probably anywhere from a 3 to 5 part series. So I hope you enjoy it, and let me know what your thoughts are.
You can see where the heater core's been leaking. When you release the petcock, make sure that you don't bend the petcock tabs. It's not the hardest metal. You just want to use the box. I use the box end wrench, just kind of release a little bit of pressure, and then I kind of do it by hand. My goal here is to get rid of most of the radiator coolant as I can. So when I pull those hoses, it won't drip. I'll have less drippage all over the shop floor. I have no idea how long this coolant's been in here, so it's another good option to kind of change this out. Kind of take a look at the coolant, see how rusty it is and stuff. So the box end I used to kind of unloosen the petcock a little bit was a 7/16. Like I said, I just used the end of the wrench just to tug on it. Just to be real gentle though, you don't want to break those tabs off. You can also use a pair of pliers as well. And while that's draining, I'm going to get a common or standard screwdriver, and so I can start taking these hoses off. So when you take the hoses off, just take a look at kind of the hose clamps you have. Every car is going to be a little bit different. You know, who knows what the previous owner had on there or what you have. You know, you can either take it off with a socket, because a lot of them have a hex head, so you can get the socket on there, or you could I prefer just using a screwdriver, but we'll see how that goes. You want to be real careful when you take these off. If you're going near your terminal, you don't want to get it on the touch the positive side. Should have actually probably unhooked the battery, and I'll do that in just a second. Okay, the coolant is just about out of the radiator. It's kind of getting to a really slow drip. So at this point, I kind of like to close the petcock back up, because I'm going to be moving the pan around, so that way it'll prevent extra stuff from not getting on the garage floor. The next thing I like to do is I like to take the lower radiator hose off. And so I'll take the camera off the tripod, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like over here. There's the lower radiator hose clamp. So when you set these back up, you want to if you're going to use hose clamps like this, you want to make sure that you can set them up to where you can be able to unscrew that and tighten it as needed later on. And then the actual lower one, kind of hard to see. It's going to be right there. Now in this case, that particular screw head is going to be pointing to the ground, which is a good place to put it back when you get it. So I won't be able to shoot a picture of that, but I'll call it underneath the car and kind of unbolt that. What I like to do is I'll unbolt the one from the radiator first. Now to give me a little bit more leverage to twist off the one that goes onto the water pump. Here's the lower radiator hose pulled off the radiator. You can kind of see, you're going to get some water out of this lower radiator hose because it kind of sets in the bottom. So don't be surprised. Make sure you have the pan underneath it when you pull it. Like I said, right now I've just pulled it from the radiator. I'm going to let that drain for a second. And you can kind of see how dirty the radiator coolant is. So this coolant's probably been sitting in the car for several years. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and unloosen the radiator clamp from the one that goes to the water pump on the other end of this hose. And now that this is loose, I can use that to actually twist and kind of help wiggle it off the water pump. So sometimes they get stuck. Here's that radiator hose clamp on the lower radiator hose. And so I'm gonna actually unscrew this or loosen this up from the top. I'll probably go through this, put my hand through this fan belt and kind of go right at the clamp from there. So when they put this hose clamp on this lower radiator hose, they kind of put it at an angle where it's really hard to get the screwdriver into it. So when you put yours back, remember that, to think kind of down the road one day when and if you have to replace the hose, you want to make sure you can get to the hose clamps. I'm doing the hose clamp is loose, so I'm just kind of wiggling it around to kind of break the seal, because they tend to stick to, especially the metal band ones, they tend to stick to the hose. And when you're working around this fan, even though the car is off and all that kind of stuff, be very careful, because the blades can be very sharp, especially on these aluminum fans. Okay, I got the clamp off and it's kind of slid all the way down the hose. And looks like it might have fallen into the radiator coolant pan, that's fine. At this point, we'll see if I can wiggle it from the top. If I can't, I'm going to go down below and kind of twist it off. Okay, I was able to twist it off. This is what this hose looks like. Oh, good news. Looks like the spring is still inside of here. They put the spring in the lower radiator hose. It's in there pretty good. I did get a new one with the new hose. So when the sucks it up the coolant, it doesn't collapse the lower radiator hose. So you should have a spring inside of the lower radiator hose. And if you put new hoses on, make sure you get a new one. If the old one's kind of beat up or rusty. Okay, now we're going to go back to working on this upper radiator hose. This time I'm going to go ahead and move the catch pan over to this side of the car. Kind of line up the best I can. So like I said, every hose is going to be different. Some of them come off easier than other ones. In this particular case, I'm just going to I loosen up the clamp and I'm going to try to twist it off if I can. We'll see how it goes. Looks like they broke the seal on that. I'm going to wiggle it off, being careful of the fin so I don't cut my hand. But if I can, looks like they got a spring in the upper one too. Let's see if I can kind of drain that out a little bit. Okay, now I'll kind of attack the one that how the hose goes into the thermostat housing. So far I've gotten lucky. I haven't had to pull up the ratchet or the sockets. Like I said, you could attack it that way. I like to kind of use the screwdriver. And I kind of like to go pretty loose on these so I can kind of scoot the whole clamp up the hose. So this line that they put on is just a covering. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull that off. That way I can kind of work with the hose a little bit more. Okay, the hose is being a little stubborn. So I'm going to do is just use a pry bar and try to kind of break that seal that's kind of stuck around the thermostat housing. You can kind of hear the hose, how it sticks to the metal a little bit. Okay, I'm going to try to wiggle it off. Let's see what happens. There we go. Now, there we go. Okay, that is the upper radiator hose. So now we've got the upper off and the lower off. We've got the radiator coolant drained, and then the next step is going to be putting new hoses on. Okay, this is going to be the heater core replacement. I'm going to start with taking this hose off and then this hose off and see if I can get some of the coolant drained out. I already have a catch can underneath the fan belt, so my goal is to start with this one and then hopefully let some of it drain into the catch can underneath the fan belt. Kind of just trying to work this hose clamp up this. This is actually stainless steel braided covering that someone's put on. So I'm going to replace this with a regular standard hose. I'm just kind of working it up the hose. Kind of wiggling it off. There we go. There's actually no coolant in that one. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove this right here. Just Just want to take note of which heater hose goes to which area. So there's two places this plugs in. There's a top one and a lower one. The lower one's actually going to go to the water pump, and the top one's going to go to the intake manifold right behind the thermostat housing. There you go. So those hoses go right through the firewall. So you'll actually pull those through the firewall, or you could cut them off if you want. And if you're going to replace the hoses, you can go ahead and cut them off. That's probably what I'm going to do because I got all new hoses. Here's where the hoses actually go through the firewall. There's the upper and the lower one. They go right into the heater core. So you'll slide those through the firewall. Okay, what I'm going to do next is, you don't have to do this. I'm just trying to minimize some spillage. So I already got the catch can down there. I'm just going to blow a little compressed air through the kind of right into the drip pan. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and cut the lines just to make it a little bit easier when I pull it through. Okay, the next couple of things we need to do is this wiring right here. There's actually a pigtail underneath all that blue tape. So I'm going to unravel that and see what kind of mystery is underneath there. It should hopefully be just the pigtail intact. And then also on this heater blower motor right here, we need to take off the 3 bolts that hold in the mounting bracket, because that hooks into the back of the heater core box. So that's what I'll be working on next. Okay, the bolts that hold on this bracket they're 5/16. Okay, there's going to be 3 bolts for this fan bracket. The one on the far side is going to be, they are 5/16, and the big one's going to be 7/16. Okay, here's the fan spacer bracket, or the fan bracket. So that's out. From this point, the fan should come right out. Actually, there's hold on a second. There's one more bolt down here. On these 390s, there's not a lot of room. If you get the nut started, a lot of times it's easier to just use your hands. There we go. Okay. Just double checking. So there's 4, it looks like there's 4 altogether that go around the fan blower motor. So after you get the bracket off, you can remove these. Last nut appears to be stuck on. Okay, I finally got it off. I ended up, I don't know if the washer got crooked or what, it's a little boogered up. I ended up having to grab hold of it with a pair of pliers, like that, and just kind of wiggling it back and forth and kind of prying it back and forth until I could get it to grab those threads and kind of twist it out. So that last bolt finally did come out. So there's 4 of these that are around the fan blower motor. Okay, we're going to continue on with the heater core. I'm actually going to go ahead and take the glove box out, just the liner on the 67 Mustang. Just if we take the liner out, I think we can get access and get a better picture of the cables and stuff we need to take apart. Got 4 Phillips screws real quick. I'll take out real quick. 2 on the top here, and then 2 right here on the door, a little bit further down. Okay, got those out. Okay, so here's behind the heater box so you can see it a little bit better. We're going to start off with taking these wires off over here. Just try and gently wiggle them off. So that's what those 2 look like. Put those off to the side. The next thing we got is to take these bolts off right here. There's one there, and there's one back in the back, and that's for the cable for the heater cables to go to the control switch. The other thing is right touch my screwdriver on it for you. Right here, this bracket right here, there's supposed to be a bolt that goes up through right here. It's missing, so that's obviously a bolt you'd have to take out to drop the whole heater box assembly. In this case, it's just completely missing, so we'll have to get a replacement for that, but that'll make it easier for the pulling it out. Okay, I went ahead and marked the cables, and what I did is just so I could kind of make it easier on when I put them back together, so we can kind of see which the front cable is and what the rear cable is. And then I'm going to take that bracket off. It's just one bolt, and it's a 5/16 inch socket. Okay, at this point, you can just start. What I did is I went to the engine compartment, kind of pushed on the motor a little bit to push the threads to the firewall, and feed the hoses in there a little bit, and then you can start wiggling out. You want to be very careful of the left side of the box, or the driver's side of the box, so you don't rip it or damage it. But you just kind of slowly, and in my case, I had a bunch of stray wires that were hanging there, so you want to make sure you don't tug on those, and just make sure they clear the heater box when you're pulled it out. So I'm just going to slowly work it out and kind of wiggle it down. Okay, here it is. It kind of wiggled down. Like I said, you want to be very careful on the left side of the box. There is one more cable that's connected to it, and you'll have to, the ducting, you'll have to just pull off. It just pulls right off. So there's two duct hoses that pull off, and then I'll work on the other cable, which is on the driver's side of the box. Okay, here's that driver's side of the box. You can see the cable goes into it, and once the box is kind of wiggled out a little bit, you should be able to get that 5/16 socket on the back of it, and so you can unhook that cable. Okay, here's the heater box all removed. Like I said, when I pulled that one cable out, and it was just hooked in, let me show you, right there. The rest of the box just came right out. It's the same 5/16 inch socket in my case. There's the original heater box, and we'll kind of go through it slow by slow. Next part of the video series, I'm going to go ahead and rip that apart and kind of restore this box.
Hope you enjoyed part one. Click on part two to continue on with the series. I'm going to have these uploaded as soon as I can. Take a little while to edit, but as soon as I finish them up, I will get them uploaded. So part one was the removal, and we're going to move on to disassembly of the actual box next.